Just to clarify, we are looking at true production cars in street legal form, not race cars, and we're looking specifically at top speed, and we're starting where it counts, the turn of the century, going through to today. This is the fastest car from every decade. The 1900s was really a time of incredible innovation. Holding the title of fastest car at this time was actually no easy feat, as top speeds went up an average of about 5 miles per hour per year. Oh, and the roads sucked. It's also a unique time in that the line between production cars and race cars isn't really as clear as today. It was also kind of the wild, wild west. Reporting of these numbers was pretty wonky. There were many one-off specials built specifically for land speed record breaking, but on the production side, as far as I can tell, the fastest car from this decade should go to the Apperson Jackrabbit with a guaranteed top speed of 75 miles per hour in 1907. It's often reported that the Mercedes Simplex 60 horsepower is the fastest, but that car was reported to go about 73 miles per hour, so I think we have to give it to the Jackrabbit. Produced in small quantities, but still a true production car, this roadster would cost you upwards of $5,000 US. In 1907, that's a lot of money. About $170K today, but well worth it because with this car, you could consider yourself part of a limited class of owners who want a car that can be put to any service, racing, or touring. 75 miles per hour at this time, pretty insane. Though there's debate about how one could define such a thing, this car is often given the title of the world's first sports car. It is the Austro-Daimler Prinz Heinrich, and it was capable of 87 miles per hour from its 95 horsepower engine. The reason this car is often considered the first true sports car is that it was truly an exercise in weight savings and aerodynamics over more capacity. When you realize that Ferdinand Porsche Sr. is the man behind the design, it kind of all makes sense. Sure, it had a big engine by today's standard, 5,700 cc's, but at that time it was dwarfed by other race cars, and it did dominate in racing, particularly its debut and the race that it was made for and named after, the Prinz Heinrich race. Though mainly a race car, it was sold in production form, which was basically the same as the race car, and there were lots of variations and versions of this car even sold under other companies' names, but for 1910 through 1920, this is the fastest car in the world. Now at this point, things start to get kind of crazy, because despite growth in racing and just production sports car competition, one car really stands out far above the rest. You probably guessed it, the greatest American car ever, the massive, technologically advanced Duesenberg Model J that came out in 1928. Now, I have an entire video on this car if you want to learn more, but the gist is this. Two brothers, Ossie and Fred Duesenberg, were really given free rein financially to set out to make the greatest car ever, and they freaking did. With tech derived from racing, the Model J featured a 7-liter double overhead cam engine making 265 horsepower, and in later supercharged form, 320 horsepower. This car had a top speed of 116 miles per hour. Yes, that's like 30 miles per hour faster than the fastest car from the 1910s. And that car was a race car made in short supply for production, whereas this really was just a true production car, though it of course would be raced. And the 1930s would tell the same story. Nothing could touch the Model J, and in the 30s, that supercharged SJ version was released, and it could do 140 miles per hour. And that brings us to the 1940s, and it's often stated that the XK120 usurped the Model J with its 120 miles per hour top speed. Sorry, Donut Media. It is true that the XK120 had a slightly higher top speed than the initial base Model J, but the supercharged Duesenberg Model SJ that came out in 32 was capable of 140 miles per hour. And though it was a rare limited vehicle primarily because it was so expensive and it did come out right after the Depression, it was still a true production street legal car, and it was, at least in terms of top speed, quite a bit faster than the XK120, which is pretty insane to think of. Of course, an XK120 was much more modern and, would destroy it in a traditional race around a track, and maybe even in a 0 to 60, but in terms of top speed, the SJ would not be taken down until the release of a car in the 1950s. So the Model J, in either form, held the record of being the fastest car through the 20s, 30s, and the 1940s, not just the 20s and 30s. Now this brings us to the 1950s and a truly ridiculous car. Though the Jaguar XK130 and XK140 had come out at this point, the fastest car from this decade is the Aston Martin DB4 GT, capable of slightly over 150 miles per hour. This specific version of the DB4 came out towards the end of the 50s, and it was a special, lightweight version of the DB4. The higher compression 3.8-liter double overhead cam straight six made just over 300 horsepower, and its 0 to 60 was 6.2 seconds, which is pretty crazy for this time. Now again, I don't want to harp on the Duesenberg, but the SJ did the 0 to 60 in right around 8 seconds, which when you think about how not aerodynamic and how heavy that car was, and just the fact that the Model J was, I think, a 3-speed and not synchronized, pretty crazy. Anyways, back to the DB4. Fastest car of the 1950s, very fast, very cool. Now, as the 60s came to a close, the muscle car movement was really born, and 0 to 60 times as well as top speeds were really massively increased. Okay, 0 to 60 times were decreased, but you get the point. But despite all of that, Corvettes, GTOs, Mustangs, Cobras, whatever, Italy takes the cake, not with the quad-cam V12 Ferrari Daytona GTB4, its 174 mile per hour top speed was nice. No, the Lamborghini Miura P400S, unveiled towards the very end of the 60s, was capable of around 180 miles per hour. Now the Duesenberg Model J, I'm kidding, chill. In just 60 years, the fastest car went from 80 to 180 miles per hour. This hardy little V12 made 370 horsepower, and though it was a raw, outright sports car with unbelievable performance for this time, it was also a massive step up for Lamborghini in terms of just style and comfort and luxury. Notice that at this point, the fastest cars are coming at the end of the decades, and that's to be more expected as more design and development really improves each year. The fastest car of the 70s actually does not go to the Lamborghini Countach LP400 because Lamborghini pretty clearly lied about that car's top speed to try to oust the Ferrari Daytona. Honestly, there's no good evidence that even the late 70s versions of the Countach were going any faster in terms of top speed than the Lamborghini Miura P400S. So I guess Lamborghini does get it for the 70s, but simply put, it's either the Countach LP400 or the Miura P400S. Both are right around 175 to 180 in terms of top speed, and Ferrari at this point was just short of that time. Now in the 80s, things not only got more ridiculous, they also got a bit more official. Simply put, Porsche was making the fastest sports cars in the world, and now in the 80s, it was beyond just 0 to 60 in lap times, where it kind of dominated the 70s. Now in the 80s, it was catching up to the Italian sports cars in terms of just overall top speed. In 1988, Auto, Motor und Sport, a German automotive magazine, held a top speed test, and the Porsche 959 and Ferrari F40, they lost. That's right, the Roof CTR won with a top speed of 213 miles per hour. Look at this nice, not Porsche. Okay, this is a car that's based on a 911. It's pretty much a 911 on steroids. It's lighter, it's more powerful, and just ridiculously fast. And with this car, we are now a solid 20 miles per hour past the fastest cars of the 70s and well into the 200 mile per hour range for top speed. Now, many would point to the McLaren F1 as the fastest production sports car through the 90s with its ridiculous top speed of 240 miles per hour. And I would say that by most accounts, it is the verified winner. But there is another company with another car, a company originally known for doing the same kind of thing that Roof was doing, which is customizing Porsches. That company had their own car, a true production car, though there was only one model ever made, custom made, and taking like 5 years and costing more than 4 McLarens, powered by a twin turbocharged Mercedes-Benz M117 V8 engine, making a whopping 1,000 horsepower, accelerating from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds in 1995 with an unverified top speed of, get this, 268 miles per hour, the Lotec C1000. Now, I choose to trust the manufacturers from the early 1900s who advertised their cars boldly as capable of, say, 75 or 80 miles per hour. I trust Ferrari when it says that the F40 can do 200 miles per hour plus, despite the fact that it couldn't. And you know what? I choose to trust Lotec with their theoretical top speed of 268 miles per hour. Maybe it couldn't quite do that, but I'm going to give it to the underdog. I think this car was a little bit faster than the McLaren F1. Actually, it probably couldn't even do 200 miles an hour. Let's be real. For real though, it is a crazy car and it does almost deserve its own video. Maybe we'll make a video about that car at some point. Now, this is the decade the Veyron came out. If we're taking the F1 route as the fastest car of the 90s, then the original Veyron from this decade takes the win with a top speed of 253 miles per hour, thanks to its 8-liter W16 engine making almost 1,000 horsepower. But if we're going the speculative route that the low-tech C1000 and even later down the road, when the new Veyron comes out with a top speed of 267 miles per hour, that theoretical 268 is still winning. But all of this should be taken into account, and we don't definitely know how fast that car actually was. So it's fair to just say Bugatti kind of dominated the top speed race of this era, and honestly most manufacturers at this time kind of stopped worrying so much about top speed and focused more on 0 to 60 in lap times. Now in the 2000s though, one manufacturer got in a bit of a back and forth with Bugatti in this ridiculous and silly pursuit of higher top speeds, and that's Koenigsegg. And they released a car that forced Bugatti to actually remove their electronic top speed limiter, allowing the Chiron Supersport 300 in 2019 to do 305 miles per hour. Now, for the current decade, the Chiron Supersport, it kind of just shut everyone up. Sure, the Rimac Nevera has broken every other world record, but the Bugatti is still way faster than... Wait a second. So there are loads of controversial claims and speedruns showing current cars going well past any of Bugatti's official Guinness Book of World Record runs, but many of those have been proven false. But there is one car currently planning to dethrone the Bugatti, and it's one that I trust, though I don't think any of this is verified. The Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute, with a claimed potential 330 mile per hour top speed, and apparently they're planning to take a stab at the top speed record, so, we shall see then. Bugatti still holds the official top speed record for a production car, and all of this is very interesting because today we're sort of back where we were at the beginning of the 1900s, when many manufacturers were trying to take the illustrious title of having the fastest car in the world. I mean, Bugatti is just kind of synonymous with top speed at this point. And somehow it appears that none of this is slowing down anytime soon. And it'll be interesting if we ever get a production car that surpasses the 400 mile per hour sort of barrier. But at this point, the biggest problem is tires, really more than anything. And with that, we have come to the end. From 75 miles per hour at the very beginning of this whole motoring thing to today, a time when many manufacturers are capable of making supercars that can rocket past 300 miles per hour. To me, the cars that stand out in terms of top speed for all of automotive history are really the Bugatti and the Bugatti Chiron, and even some of Bugatti's more recent supercars, and then it's the Duesenberg Model J. Few other cars besides these have held records for more than a few years, so I think those are the cars of note, and those two cars have a lot of similarity in my opinion. Alright, thanks for watching guys. I know this was a bit of a different sort of video than I normally do, but I had fun with it and I hope you did too. We'll see you guys in the next one. Drive safe, especially if you're planning on going 300 miles per hour.